They weren't just TV characters. Long before Netflix made them legends, the Peaky Blinders were very real. In the dark backstreets of 19th century Birmingham, they dressed sharp, fought dirty, and ruled the slums with blood and fear. They weren't just gangsters, they were a cultural phenomenon, mixing brutal violence with polished style. And their reign only ended when a bigger, tougher gang brought them down. This is the true, untold story behind the real Peaky Blinders.
Peaky Blinders took place in the late 19th century, from the 1890s to the 1910s. However, it is true that this gang originated in the slums of Birmingham, namely in the Small Heath area.
The story begins in the late 1800s, when Birmingham was drowning in poverty. Industrialization had left the city overcrowded, filthy, and divided. Families crammed into damp, crumbling houses, unemployment was sky high, and the streets became battlegrounds for restless youth. Out of this chaos, gangs began to rise, armed with belts, knives, and fists. Among them was a group that would leave an unforgettable mark, the Peaky Blinders.
From the upper classes, police began to crack down on gambling dens and adolescent rough sports on Birmingham streets. The divide between the upper and poorer classes has widened.
Their name wasn't just a label, it was a statement. Peaky referred to the pointed peaks of their flat caps, while blinder was slang for someone dressed to impress.
Later Peaky Blinders gang wore fitted clothing.
The legend goes further, claiming they stitched razor blades into their caps, headbutting enemies and slashing their faces open. Whether fact or myth, the name became synonymous with stylish danger. If someone whispered, "The Blinders are coming," you knew violence wasn't far behind.
Iconic disposable razor blades at the apex of their flat caps have been used as their weapons.
Unlike other street thugs who wore rags, the Peaky Blinders turned crime into a fashion show. They wore tailored jackets, silk scarves, bell-bottom trousers, and their iconic peaked caps. They weren't just robbing people, they were sending a message. They wanted to look like kings of the street, men who demanded respect even while mugging, brawling, or running from the law. Their style made them stand out, and that style became part of their legend. At first, their crimes were small, pickpocketing in crowded markets, robbing drunkards in alleys, and street fighting for reputation. But they soon graduated into bigger rackets. Illegal betting, protection money, smuggling, and extortion became their specialties. They ran the streets like a business empire. If you wanted to gamble, sell, or even survive in their territory, you paid them. And if you didn't, you'd face a brutal beating in front of everyone as a warning. The Peaky Blinders weren't just about making money. They were about control. They ruled through raw terror. Rival gangs were smashed, shopkeepers were bullied into paying taxes, and even ordinary citizens lived in fear of crossing them. One chilling report from the time described how gangs like the Blinders would fight until the cobblestones ran red with blood. Their violence wasn't random. It was their brand, their tool, their weapon. Unlike the TV show, there was no Tommy Shelby masterminding the empire. The real Peaky Blinders were not a single-family dynasty, but a loose network of violent young men. Figures like Thomas Gilbert, who later changed his name to Kevin Mooney, rose as feared leaders, but there was no one mastermind pulling the strings. The gang thrived on chaos, unpredictability, and raw brutality rather than organized strategy. Local police officers often stood no chance against them. The Blinders moved in packs, ambushing officers in alleys, beating them with belts and boots, or bribing them to look the other way. Whole neighborhoods were considered under gang control, where the law dared not step in without backup. Newspapers at the time described Birmingham as a place where criminals ruled the streets, and the police were simply too scared, or too outnumbered, to stop them. But every empire meets its end. By the 1910s, a bigger, tougher gang emerged. The Birmingham Boys, led by the infamous Billy Kimber. Unlike the Blinders, Kimber's men were more organized, more ruthless, and better connected. The Birmingham boys muscled in on their rackets, smashed their control, and slowly pushed the Blinders out of power. The Razor Cap legends began to fade, replaced by a new criminal dynasty. Though their power collapsed, their reputation lived on. In Birmingham, the name Peaky Blinders remained slang for violent, stylish gangs. Decades later, when the world thought they were long forgotten, a TV series resurrected their myth, turning half-truths and legends into gripping drama. The show blended fact and fiction, but one thing was undeniable. The Peaky Blinders left behind a legacy that history could never erase. So the next time you watch Tommy Shelby walk through smoky Birmingham streets in his sharp suit and flat cap, remember this. Behind the drama lies a brutal truth. The real Peaky Blinders weren't masterminds of organized crime. They were desperate young men from the slums who ruled with fear, violence, and a touch of deadly style. Their empire fell, but their legend became immortal.